JB here. Hopefully, I hit the button this time. Monday, July 1st, 2024. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. We have about 1 hour, 8 minutes to the close. Talk quick about the markets. Talk a little bit about some of the names I added today, some profits I took, and go from there. But look at the S&P, some chop today, all the way down under that 543 handle before bouncing, and then we're somewhat mixed here. Small caps are still taking it on the chin, down nearly 0.8%, or over 0.8%, while the S&P is slightly in the green. So much for outperformance in the IWM, at least for today, after the last 2 days of outperformance. The thing that was curious this morning, the VIX, it spiked all the way up to 1326. I think it was 7 or 8% to the upside. As the market pulled back, there's no real big news or catalyst to speak of. And then it's just reversed, and VIX is back in the red. So back to normal, back to the status quo. So watching that 543 seems like a big spot. Probably some more chop tomorrow. We have talked about this morning. Fed Chair Powell will be at an ECB annual roundtable. He'll be talking with Lagarde. I assume that's in the morning. So definitely something to at least be aware of. And then Wednesday is the half day, and we get the Fed minutes, which Fed minutes typically come out at 2 o'clock. Mark close at 1. That'll be interesting. Got to follow up on that. And then the big piece of that will be the jobs report on Friday. And last jobs report better than expected. Was strong? I'm trying to remember. It seems like back and forth. I'll have to go look at that as well. But it's going to be important for that to come in at least flat or maybe a little less than expected, and then I think the market will be okay. And then earnings season starting the following week, the following Friday. So that's that. IWM back under its 50-day moving average. 50 days 201.91 to 201.17. Hopefully that finds a little bit into the close. But first, I'll talk about Roku. Was up 7 sessions in a row coming into today. Now it's up 8 sessions in a row if it holds the gains here. It ramped right at the open. The bell rang 63.76. It ran to at 10 o'clock before pulling back to 61, and now it's pretty much flatlined ever since. Um, I did lock some more strikes in today. As much as I was thinking of taking off the entire July position and just holding to August. I also thought maybe I'll get some inexpensive out of the money calls. Some of the weekly, I would call them weekly lottos, the spec calls for Roku were seeing some high volume. So I don't know if people are betting on some upside or protect themselves or what have you. Um, so for now, I'll just sit on my hands. I lock some more July strikes in, and that's what I'll do. Uh, if it continues to rally, I'll lock the rest of the Julys in and just hold the August. The Julys were over 200% at times after I locked the strikes in, and just I'll sit on my hands on that. But I think it's setting up for a move at least to 65. I thought I would do it today before pulling back. The upper Bollinger Band on Roku 61.39, so it's above that. So maybe it needs a little breather, a day or two before it starts its run to the over 65. I think once it catches fire, I put it on FinTwit in the chat room. Once it catches fire, I call it FOMO the Momo, right? The fear of missing out the momentum. And if it starts to catch fire, people are going to start looking and say, wow, this thing could go start filling gaps at the 70 handles. And I said this before, not to the 90 handle just yet, pending any crazy catalyst. Maybe it'll need earnings for that. So that's Roku. Finally added Celsius Holdings. I was trying to, I don't like to use the term, but catching a falling knife can be painful. So I didn't want to be in a situation where it could just continue to fall. Broke under the 200-day moving average at 65. Started to bounce last week, kind of fizzle a little bit, and then it was running right out of the gate this morning, all the way up to 61.25. So I added some strikes. I put it on the private Twitter feed and in the chat room that if it does kind of hold here, I'll probably look for some August strikes. I just think it's a great growth story, and some of the sell-off, although there's a lot of these analysts hopping in that supplies are high, inventory's high, demand is kind of coming up, cooling down just a little bit. It's a high growth story, high multiple, so it's very easy to get folks to pick at the story. But I like this one, at least for a move back into the 70s in the coming weeks. So got those strikes. And I also added VKTX. It seems like every time I get it, I'm waiting for it to show signs of it finally breaking out and starting to head back where it should, which to me is, my opinion, triple digits. And it seems like every time I try and get the calls, it's pretty much marks the short bounce, and then it reverses course. I mean, I thought 70 was the low. I thought 60 would be the low, and then it broke under 50, and now finally starting to bounce. You had that Morgan Stanley positive note last week. Maybe that was the kick it needed. So I think over $60 shortly. 50-day moving average is 63.49. So why don't I have this up here? Sorry, folks. All right. Yeah, so I think it heads there shortly. So that's why I got July strikes. I was looking at August, but the risk reward. So if it doesn't, and I said this, I was going to do just weekly strikes, but I looked at the cost and premiums come down. So I think it's just best. I'll just probably roll into monthly strikes for the move higher. And if it does move higher, I'll add August strikes and so on and so forth. So that's VKTX, CLH. National Beverage back to back to back. So talked about this one huge move from earnings last Thursday, then Friday it held those gains, and then today it's moving higher off those gains, hitting it's right at highs right now 52.80. Still have just a couple of my 51.75s. They were over $2 before. The spreads are tough because it's not the most liquid name. So when you look at the option market, I mean, so the bid's 160, the ask is 240 on those 51.75s. I'll just hold those if I said 50 would be the stop if it had some weakness. Considering the follow through again, I think it's going to go over $55. So if that's the case, I'll just hold for that possible outcome and use maybe I'll use my stop at 51. So if it can't hold 51 in the coming days, I'll just close the rest of the position. I don't even know if I'll revisit. It's not one of those names. It doesn't move quick and it's not liquid, so it makes it very difficult to trade unless yeah, I had serious conviction that I think it's a 70, 80, $90 stock, which maybe it is over time, but I think there's other better plays out there to spread risk around. I won't have too much on it at one time. So that's kind of the thought process there on Fizz. Dell, I put my trend lines. I just updated. I'll post it here in the chat room. But it broke under the lower trend line support resistance and then bounced. It was a massive reversal off the lows this morning, all the way down to 133 and sitting up here at 143, hitting highs as we speak. Um, you know, still love Dell here. I I keep saying I think it's headed to $200. I'll probably I did it before when into earnings, and I forget what catalyst it was, and the calls came back to life in a major way. So I might get some lower strikes at some point, but maybe I'll wait for tomorrow. Maybe if it shows some fall through into tomorrow, I'll look to get those strikes. Chewy, why don't I have Chewy up here? I thought I had a Chewy slide on here, but I guess I don't. Chewy, at some point I was looking to get some more strikes there on Chewy as well. I mentioned on the watch list this morning, it's volatile. And then there's so many folks. If you just look on FinTwit, it's like Roaring Kitty's now like he's a villain now, right? And you you hate to say motives behind some people, but is it jealousy? Is it that they all make this the big argument that he's moving stocks based on just posting a picture, a meme on FinTwit, but then would that person do it if they could do it? And obviously the guy's got to be careful. I mean, he's already got there was a class action or suit filed against the GameStop is for pump and dump manipulation or whatever they want to call it. But I always use this analogy, and first he can post whatever he wants on FinTwit, whether he thinks it's going to move the stock or not. I mean, that's that's up to him, right? That's number one. Number two, that if he posts his positions on Reddit or if he does his YouTube stream at some point again, I mean that's on him, right? So it's similar to, and I use this analogy as well. It's like Warren Buffett. These hedge funds, they all post their quarterly filings and position update, and when Buffett got a huge stake in Apple, the stock or he sells off position, the stock goes down. I mean, it's a similar thing, right? I mean, if people look at you as being a proficient at what you do, and some of these hedge funds are really proficient, people pile into stocks that those hedge funds are in, right? What's the difference? So it's you know, it's apples and oranges for some people. If Buffett does it, it's fine, but if Warren Kitty does it, it's manipulation and pump and dump. And anyway, so that's my rant there. Oh, also of note, if you look at the volume on the S&P and the small caps and some of these index, it's extremely low today. I don't know if my data is not updating, but We still have an hour left in the session. Let's see if I can get the S&P daily, the volume right now versus the other days. Oh, actually, it's why do I have wrong data then? All right, well, it's actually the third most volume we've had in the last month and a half, 2 months. So, all right, scrap that. All right, so we'll see. Hopefully, despite I mean, I'm happy it bounced off of 543. Maybe we have some chop again tomorrow. I'm not. I'm hoping we don't get any crazy end of session pull, and yeah, go from there. I think that's it on my rant. I was trying to think of the other things I was gonna. Altamune was going this morning as well. I still have those 9 strikes. I'm not gonna add anything just yet, but I mentioned it last week, that New York Post article where there's different, the big thing about weight loss is that you lose the right weight, right? You want to lose your muscle. So that's a big like, talking point for their weight loss drug. But right now the stock really hasn't done much since its ADA update. So hopefully it starts to take off. That's about it, folks. Let's have a great afternoon. I'll be back on audio tomorrow. Rock and roll.